What if I told you that Hamilton's Ferrari is hiding something so critical that not even the most faithful fans know? What if that secret were the key to understanding the immediate future of the most legendary team of the F1? Stay, because what you are going to discover, put your hair. What very few knew then is that, internally, the SF25 project already dragged structural doubts since the last phases of 2024. Hamilton discovered it very fast. From the first kilometers of the preseason tests, the British felt that something did not square. The driving position was uncomfortable, the car felt unpredictable to the limit, and the feedback that came from the sensors did not match the sensation to the wheel. In technical briefings, their reports were detailed, even clinical, but the most striking was the growing frustration in its tone. Hamilton was used to machines refined to the millimeter in Mercedes. What he found in Maranello was a car still in the phase of understanding. And while the media tried to make up the situation with phrases such as adaptation process or initial phase of understanding, which really cooked in the paddock of Maranello was uncertainty. Because although Hamilton is one of the best pilots of all time, he cannot compensate for the deficiencies of an unstable car. Internally, the first debate among the engineers was lit. Were they facing a problem of design philosophy or a temporary bump? The technical direction bet on the second. Hamilton, on the other hand, began to suspect the first. That clash of visions is what sowed the first crack. Because it was not only results. It was a matter of credibility. Lewis had left Mercedes' stability for a promise. Build a winning car from scratch with total support. But now, with each batch of practice, with each technical meeting, what was being clear was that the SF25 project was not only immature, it was unpredictable. And the worst, that unpredictability had no clear solution. And so, the story that began as a romantic epic, stained with dark tones, doubts, growing pressure. The paddock knows it. When Ferrari begins to doubt internally, the season can become an emotional minefield. And if that happens with a pilot like Hamilton, whose patience has clear limits, the consequences could be unpredictable for the entire Maranello structure. When Ferrari presented the SF25, he did it with a blunt message, an evolution of the SF24, but with 99% of the redesigned car. At first glance, it sounded like a silent revolution. But in the world of Formula One, such promises almost always hide a burden of uncertainty. Because changing almost everything, maintaining the same structural base, is not redesign, it is to rebuild on the same foundations that had previously failed. The great structural change of SF25 was the adoption of the pull rod suspension system in the front, a radical turn in Ferrari's technical philosophy. This system, which seeks to reduce turbulence and clean aerodynamic flow below chassis, is more common in designs that prioritize soil efficiency. The problem is that Ferrari not only changed the suspension, he did it without still dominated the aerodynamic balance of the previous car. That generated a chain reaction. With a modified front suspension, the entire balance of the car was altered. The load moved unpredictably in braking phases combined with turns, the march height became unstable, and the SF25 began to show curved erratic behaviors. To this was added another technical pump. The design of the front wing, which Ferrari maintained with a separate central section, began to suffer from the new flexion limits established by the FIA. From the Spain Grand Prix, the maximum allowed from 15 mm to only 10 mm will be reduced. This difference, although it may seem minimal, is decisive. It means that all the elastic game that Ferrari used to create variable load under specific conditions is over. In simple terms, it is as if they forced you to run with new shoes in the middle of a marathon. And Ferrari knows it. That is why he is working to counter-religion solutions that can mitigate that blow without changing philosophy. But this is where the real conflict enters. Lewis Hamilton is accustomed to cars that respond predictably. You can pilot something unstable if you know why it is unstable. But SF25 is not just unstable. It is contradictory. In low-load circuits, it shows chronic subwiring. On fast tracks, the rear train is released without warning. In slow curves, torque management is complicated by differential inconsistencies. It is not a car with isolated defects. It is a car with a multiple personality. In addition, the soil of the SF25, which has been redesigned to work together with that new clean flow generated by the pull rod, is not generating the expected suction. Porpoising, although reduced with respect to 2022, is still present in high lateral load phases, which forces the progress of the desired march. The result is a car that neither can go low to maximize the soil effect, nor high to preserve mechanical stability. It is trapped in a work strip so narrow that any change in temperature, wind or asphalt unbalance the entire package. And to all this, a strategic component is added. Ferrari has prioritized 2 urgent updates that will arrive before Canada. A new rear suspension and a deep review of the ground. Not by evolutionary improvement, but by critical necessity. They are patches to stop a hemorrhage. Because if the car does not improve in Montreal, it will be almost impossible to maintain the rhythm of development in front of rivals such as McLaren or Red Bull. Ferrari needs a stable SF25 before the GP of Spain, because there changes the regulations. And if the car is still an enigma, they will not only lose performance, they could be aimless. This situation has fractured internally. The coaching staff wants to believe that it is a topic of fine adjustments. Hamilton, more and more vocal, begins to understand that the problem is base. And when a pilot of his caliber begins to talk more with engineers than with press leaders, it is that the technical situation has become unsustainable. The calendar marks a critical date, June 15th, Grand Prix of Canada. But for Ferrari, it's not just one more race. It is literally an ultimatum. Not in the superficial sense of the final result, but for what is tested, measured and decided there. In Montreal, every asphalt millimeter will be a mobile laboratory to verify if the updates implemented can save the SF25, or if this project is sentenced to a spiral of endless settings. The first thing to understand is that Canada, with the Gilles-Villeneuve circuit, is not a conventional layout. It is a challenging combination of long, straight, hard braking, technical chicanas, and very aggressive traction areas. It is a circuit that exposes stability defects, brake balance, and power delivery. And right, that is where SF25 has demonstrated its greatest weaknesses. For Ferrari, it is a nightmare turned into a validation track. In this appointment, the car will carry 2 critical updates. The first, a new rear suspension that has been redesigned to eliminate instability in the phases of lateral load and discharge. In simple words, it seeks that the car stop reacting like a roller mountain every time it changes direction. The second change, equally important, is a soil review with new air channels, side cuts, and a readjusted diffuser that seeks to recover part of the soil effect lost by geometry errors in the original design. But beyond the technique, Canada will be the first real psychological test of the project. Because this race comes just before the new front wing regulations enter into force. If these pieces do not work as expected, Ferrari will not have reaction time. It will be obliged to modify its aerodynamic concept on the march. And that, in full season, is synonymous with chaos. For Hamilton, Canada represents something more intimate. It is the track where he won his first victory in Formula One. A place full of personal history, of golden memories with McLaren. Now come back, almost 2 decades later, dressed in red, but with the feeling of running against the clock. Not only for the fight on the track, but for the need to verify that he has not made the greatest mistake of his career by leaving Mercedes for a team still in technical crisis. Ferrari pressure is brutal. If the updates do not deliver substantial improvements in time per turn, consistency of stint and adaptation to weather changes, something frequent in Canada not only will valuable points be lost, internal faith will be lost. And a Ferrari without trust becomes a reactive structure, not proactive. We have seen it before. Hurried decisions, internal reproaches, and pilots who begin to operate in survival mode. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, has already shown that he will not soften his statements if the car does not comply. In Shanghai, he turned a magical. But if that cannot be repeated consistently, the problem will no longer be talent. It will be structural. And that's when the real ruptures begin. Technical, sports, and emotional. Canada is the border between 2 possible versions of 2025 for Ferrari. In one, the improvements work, the car stabilizes, and Hamilton becomes a real candidate for the title. In the other, the SF25 confirms its technical vices, and the project wobbles before reaching the middle of the calendar. Whatever the outcome, after Montreal there will be no room for excuses. Everything will be on the table. The truth of the car, the capacity of the team, and the real decision of Hamilton. Do we fight for everything, or do we begin to think of 2026? Now that you have seen everything that is hidden behind the SF25, it is no longer just asking if Ferrari has a competitive car. The real question is another. Do you have time, structure, and vision to save this project before their hands escape? Because what we are seeing is not a simple bad start of the season. It is a deeper symptom of a conflict between ambition and technical reality, between the need to win and the ability to build with patience. And that takes us to Lewis Hamilton. He did not sign with Ferrari just for the myth or for history. He did it with a clear intention, to win his 8th title. If the car does not respond, if technical decisions remain inconsistent, if the improvements are late or badly calibrated, How much more will you wait? And what consequences could that have for the internal dynamics of the team? Because it is not just about 2025. This can condition Maranello's strategy for years. From the purely technical point of view, Canada will mark the turning point. But from the human, emotional, competitive point of view, it is the first true fire test for this Hamilton-Ferrari alliance. If the car fails, it will not be just a point problem. It will be a blow to the narrative, to the spirit, to the faith in the project. And in Formula One, when faith is lost, there are no longer adjustments that are worth. Then I ask you, do you think Ferrari can straighten the course? Do you think Hamilton should be more patient? Or that he is already losing a valuable opportunity? Are we facing a stage of solid construction or before another failed promise of Cavallino? Leave me your opinion in the comments.